Look at the world around you. We are told that we are living in the peak of civilization. We are told that our ancestors were primitive, struggling to survive, lighting fires in caves, and slowly, over thousands of years, evolving into the technological society we see today. We are given a timeline. Stone Age, Bronze Age, Iron Age, the Industrial Revolution. It is a neat, linear story. A story of constant upward progress. But what if this story is a fabrication? What if the timeline has been broken, cut, and pasted back together? What if the history books are not a record of events, but a script written to explain away the ruins we live amongst? We walk through the streets of London, of Prague, of Melbourne, of New York. We look up at the towering arches of stone, the impossible domes covered in copper and gold, the intricate brickwork that defies explanation. And we are told that these were built by people who rode horses and buggies. We are told that men in top hats, using wooden pulleys and ropes, constructed buildings that modern engineering struggles to replicate. The cognitive dissonance is deafening. We accept the narrative, but our eyes tell us a different story. The visual evidence does not match the historical record. We are living in the skeletal remains of a giant. A civilization that was global, unified, and technologically superior to our own in ways we are only beginning to understand. And something happened to them. A silence fell over the world. A reset. And we are the inheritors. Let us put aside the history books for a moment and look at the logistics. Because history can be rewritten, but physics remains. Consider the sheer volume of material required to build the cities of the 19th century. Take a standard Victorian post office or a city hall. These are not wooden structures. They are comprised of millions of red bricks, massive blocks of granite, limestone, and marble. Where did these materials come from? If you look at the official records of the mid-1800s, the population numbers were incredibly low. The infrastructure was practically non-existent. There were no highways. The roads were dirt tracks that turned into impassable mud swamps when it rained. How do you transport a 20-ton granite column from a quarry 100 miles away on a dirt road? The wooden wheels of a wagon would shatter under the weight. The horses would die of exhaustion. The road itself would collapse. And yet, we see thousands of these buildings appearing all over the world simultaneously. From the vast expanse of Russia to the newly settled towns of America. They tell us these were built in 2 or 3 years. Have you ever seen a modern construction site? With our cranes, our trucks, our hydraulic systems, and our computers, it takes years to build a simple concrete structure. Are we to believe that amidst civil wars, economic depressions, and famines, our ancestors prioritized the construction of massive, ornate, acoustically perfect stone palaces? And let's talk about the bricks. The red brick phenomenon. To make a brick, you need clay, and you need heat. Extreme heat. You need massive kilns burning coal or wood 24 hours a day. To build a city the size of Chicago or St. Petersburg, you would need billions of bricks. The pollution from the kilns alone would have darkened the sky for decades. The deforestation required to fuel these kilns would be catastrophic. Yet, there is no record of this industrial scale. No record of the supply chains. No photos of the massive brick factories that would be required. The bricks are just there. Perhaps they were not made in the 1800s. Perhaps they were synthesized. Or perhaps they were already there, waiting to be dug out. One of the most disturbing anomalies in the photographic record is the absence of construction. Photography was invented and popularized in the mid-19th century. We have millions of photos from this era. We have photos of soldiers, of families, of landscapes. But try to find a clear, high-resolution photograph of the actual construction of the U.S. Capitol Dome, or the St. Isaac's Cathedral, or the great monuments of Europe. What we usually find are photos of scaffolding. But look closer at the scaffolding. It is thin, spindly wood. It looks like matchsticks leaning against a mountain. It is completely insufficient to bear the weight of the stone blocks it supposedly lifts. The workers in these photos, if there are any, stand around looking confused. They are not working. They are posing. They look less like builders and more like excavators. Or perhaps, painters, putting a fresh coat of whitewash on a structure that has stood for 1,000 years. We see the founding of cities. Notice the word itself. Founding. To found. Or, to find. Did they found the city, or did they find the city? Look at the photos of Seattle or San Francisco before the Great Fires. You see massive stone castles. And next to them, rickety wooden shacks where the people actually lived. It looks like a movie set. The population does not fit the architecture. It is like a group of children moving into an abandoned university. They don't know how the heating works, they don't know who built the library, they just occupy the rooms and try to survive. The architecture of the old world was not just for aesthetics. It was functional. We have forgotten that architecture is frozen music. Look at the cathedrals. The word cathedral itself creates a sound. Cathode. These structures are gigantic resonators. The vast domes, the vaulted ceilings, the specific placement of columns. This is not just decoration. This is acoustic engineering. Inside these buildings, sound behaves differently. It amplifies. It spirals. And what is the centerpiece of every great cathedral? The pipe organ. We are told it is for hymns. But have you ever looked at the mechanics of a massive pipe organ? It is a machine of immense complexity. It generates frequencies that can be felt in the bone marrow. Infrasound. Ultrasound. What if these buildings were healing centers? We know that specific sound frequencies can promote cell regeneration. They can structure water. They can levitate matter. The stone itself, granite, sandstone, is rich in quartz crystal. Quartz is piezoelectric. When you apply pressure to it, it creates an electrical charge. The sheer weight of the cathedral creates pressure on the stones below. The geometry focuses the vibration. The organ provides the frequency. Was the cathedral a power plant? A machine designed to create a field of high-frequency energy that kept the population healthy and the crops abundant? And now, they sit silent. Museums for tourists. The technology stripped out, the organs retuned to 440 Hz to suppress us rather than elevate us. We walk through the engine rooms of gods and call them places of worship. It wasn't just the cathedrals. It was the entire city. Look at the rooflines of the 19th century cities. What do you see? Spires, obelisks, domes, needles, and on top of every single one of them, a metal pole, often tipped with copper or gold. Historians call them flagpoles or lightning rods. But why would you put a lightning rod on a greenhouse? Why put it on a small gazebo? Look at the layout of the streets. They form grids, circuit boards. If you zoom out on Google Earth and look at the so-called star forts, the bastions found in every corner of the globe, the military explanation falls apart. They are too geometric, too perfect. The walls are not designed to deflect cannonballs, they are designed to shape waves. They are often surrounded by water. Water is a conductor. These star forts were the nodes, the generators. They pulled the etheric energy from the atmosphere, the static electricity that is all around us, and grounded it into the water. This energy was then transmitted wirelessly through the towers, the obelisks, and the domes to the rest of the city. This is why we see fireplaces in these old buildings that are large enough to stand in. They have no soot. They have no chimneys that connect to the outside in a way that would draw smoke. They have metal backplates. These were not for burning wood. These were ionization points. The energy collected by the roof system was channeled down and radiated out as heat and light through these hearths. Free energy. Clean. Abundant. Wireless. A civilization that did not need to dig for coal or drill for oil. A civilization that lived in harmony with the electromagnetic field of the earth. And that, specifically, is why they had to be destroyed. You cannot meter free energy. You cannot sell what is everywhere. It wasn't just the cathedrals. It was the entire city. Look at the rooflines of the 19th century cities. What do you see? Spires, obelisks, domes, needles, and on top of every single one of them, A metal pole, often tipped with copper or gold. Historians call them flagpoles or lightning rods. But why would you put a lightning rod on a greenhouse? Why put it on a small gazebo? Look at the layout of the streets. They form grids. Circuit boards. If you zoom out on Google Earth and look at the so-called star forts, the bastions found in every corner of the globe, the military explanation falls apart. They are too geometric. Too perfect. The walls are not designed to deflect cannonballs. They are designed to shape waves. They are often surrounded by water. Water is a conductor. These star forts were the nodes. The generators. They pulled the etheric energy from the atmosphere, the static electricity that is all around us, and grounded it into the water. This energy was then transmitted wirelessly through the towers, the obelisks, and the domes to the rest of the city. This is why we see fireplaces in these old buildings that are large enough to stand in. They have no soot. They have no chimneys that connect to the outside in a way that would draw smoke. They have metal backplates. These were not for burning wood. These were ionization points. The energy collected by the roof system was channeled down and radiated out as heat and light through these hearths. Free energy. Clean. Abundant. Wireless. A civilization that did not need to dig for coal or drill for oil. A civilization that lived in harmony with the electromagnetic field of the earth. And that, specifically, is why they had to be destroyed. You cannot meter free energy. You cannot sell what is everywhere. Let us look deeper into the method of destruction. If the mud flood buried the lower levels, how did they remove the upper levels of the architecture that was too advanced to explain? The answer lies in the great fires of the 19th century. Open a history book. You will see a pattern that defies statistical probability. The Great Fire of New York, 1835. The Great Fire of Hamburg, 1842. The Great Fire of Chicago, 1871. The Great Fire of Boston, 1872. The Great Fire of Seattle, 1889. The official narrative is always the same. A cow kicked over a lantern. A worker dropped a cigarette. A minor accident in a wooden barn that somehow incinerated an entire metropolis built of stone and brick. Look at the photographs of the aftermath of the Chicago fire or the San Francisco earthquake. Really look at the ruins. We are told these were wood-frame cities. But the ruins show massive steel beams twisted like spaghetti. They show granite blocks turned to powder. They show brick walls fused together by heat intense enough to melt stone. Wood fires do not melt stone. Wood fires do not twist steel beams into knots. The damage resembles the aftermath of a high-energy weapon bombardment, similar to what we saw in Dresden or Hiroshima. Yet, we are told this was a lantern. And notice what happened immediately after these fires. The cities were not just rebuilt, they were redesigned. The street layouts were changed. The massive star-shaped grids were broken up into boring, square city blocks. The energetic flow of the city was destroyed. The great fires were not accidents. They were demolition projects. A controlled burn of the old world to make way for the modern, controllable concrete jungle. If you believe the mud flood is just a theory, go to Seattle. Go to Edinburgh. Go to Moscow. Take a tour of the underground cities. In Seattle, the official tour guides will tell you a charming story. They say the city was too muddy, so they decided to raise the streets by 20 feet. Think about the engineering nightmare of that statement. They say they built retaining walls, filled them with dirt, and turned the first floors of all the businesses into basements. Then they built new sidewalks on the second floor. Does that sound like a logical solution to a drainage problem? Or does it sound like a cover-up? Walk on the sidewalks of Soho in New York or London. Look down. Do you see those small glass squares embedded in the concrete? They often glow purple with age. These are vault lights. Prism glass. They were designed to refract sunlight down into the spaces below the sidewalk. Why would you need sunlight underground, unless people were living and working there? Unless that underground was originally the street level? These tunnels connect entire cities. There are stories of tunnel systems under Los Angeles, under Paris, under Rome, that stretch for miles, lined with brick arches that are superior to anything built today. They tell us these were for sewers. But sewers do not have crown molding. Sewers do not have vaulted ceilings and mosaic floors. We are walking on the roofs of the previous civilization, oblivious to the hollow sound beneath our feet. Now, we must address the most controversial aspect of the architecture: the scale. Who were these buildings built for? Walk up the steps of the New York Public Library or the Capitol building. The steps are often uncomfortable. They are slightly too tall for an average human stride. Look at the doorknobs on the massive double doors of the old cathedrals. They are often placed at eye level for a modern human. You have to reach up to turn them. Look at the ceiling heights. A standard human needs a ceiling of 8 or 9 feet to feel comfortable. Why build a hallway with a 30-foot ceiling? Heating a room that size is a nightmare. Changing a light bulb, or lighting a candle, is a logistical impossibility without massive ladders. Unless the inhabitants were not 5 feet 8 inches tall. In every culture on Earth, from the Native Americans to the Norse, from the Bible to the Sumerian texts, there are legends of giants. The men of renown. The Titans. We dismiss these as myths. But then we look at the old photos of the Tartarians. We see photos from the 1800s of people who are 8 or 9 feet tall, standing next to normal-sized people. We are told these are circus freaks. Exceptions. Pituitary cases. But look at the art inside the capitals. Look at the statues. They depict humans holding lions like house cats. They depict humans wrestling with bulls. Was this symbolism? Or was it a depiction of a race of beings that were physically superior? If the builders were larger, the architecture makes perfect sense. The massive doors, the high ceilings, the giant steps, they were ergonomic for them. We are like children wearing our father's oversized coat, pretending we tailored it ourselves. Look at the top of the Empire State Building. Look at the spires of the old skyscrapers. We are told the Empire State Building had a docking station for dirigibles, airships. We laugh at the idea of blimps today. We think of them as slow, dangerous balloons. The Hindenburg disaster was used to scare us away from lighter-than-air travel. But what if the airships of the old world were not filled with explosive hydrogen? What if they utilized anti-gravity technology? There are ancient maps and engravings showing ships flying. Not balloons. Ships. With hulls, masts, and sails floating in the clouds. The aeronauts of the 1800s spoke of the ether, a medium that permeates all space. If you can manipulate the ether, you can negate mass. Look at the sheer amount of copper used on the roofs of these old buildings. Copper is heavy. It is expensive. Why cover a roof in copper? Unless the roof is a charging pad. Imagine a sky filled not with airplanes burning jet fuel, but with silent, majestic vessels docking at the tops of these cathedrals and towers, charging wirelessly from the building itself. A silent transportation network that connected the world without roads. This explains why we find magnificent architecture in the middle of nowhere, in places inaccessible by road. They didn't need roads. They arrived from the sky. And then there were the greenhouses. The Crystal Palaces. London, 1851. New York, 1853. Munich, 1854. Structures made entirely of glass and iron, covering acres of land. The Crystal Palace in London was 3 times the size of St. Paul's Cathedral. They tell us it was built in just a few months. Think about the glass alone. The technology to create sheets of clear, flat glass of that size and consistency did not exist in the industrial manufacturing of the mid-1800s. And yet, they had acres of it. Inside these palaces, they showcased technology. But were they showcasing new inventions? Or were they cataloging the loot? The machinery displayed at these fairs often looked out of place. Huge, intricate devices that nobody knew how to operate. And what happened to the Crystal Palaces? They all burned down. Glass and iron. Burned to the ground. Does glass burn? Does iron turn to ash? The official story insults our intelligence. These structures were likely atmospheric generators. Greenhouses not just for plants, but for people. Creating a high-oxygen, high-static charge environment where disease could not exist. They had to be destroyed because they showed us what was possible. So, why the deception? Why go to such lengths to bury the first floors, burn the roofs, and rewrite the books? Because of control. The old world, Tartaria, Atlantis, whatever name you give it, was a civilization based on abundance. Free energy from the ether. Resonance healing. Global connection. You cannot tax a population that has free energy. You cannot control a population that is healthy and connected. You cannot rule over people who know they are descended from giants. So, a parasitic force took over. They waited for the catastrophe, the mud flood, the comet, the plasma event, and they seized the moment. They dug out the factories. They smashed the statues. They burned the books. And they introduced the system of scarcity. They introduced coal and oil. They introduced debt. They introduced the 9-to-5 grind. They gave us a fake timeline that says we are just evolved monkeys, accidental specks of dust in a lonely universe. But the architecture remains. The silent witness. Every time you walk past a courthouse with Greek columns, every time you see a basement window, every time you see a copper dome, you are looking at the truth. The truth is that we have been robbed. We are royalty living in a labor camp. But the walls of the camp are cracking.